Commander Elyara of the Xylosian science vessel Truthseeker stood before the observation deck's panoramic view screen, her silver eyes fixed on the tiny speck of light that was the human vessel. Behind her, the bridge hummed with the soft clicks and whirs of Xylosian technology, a symphony of efficiency that had served her species for millennia. "We have completed our preliminary scans, Commander," reported Lieutenant Vex, his blue-skinned face illuminated by the glow of his console. "The vessel is of human origin. Designation: Unexpected Valor. It appears to be a long-range scout ship. Life signs: 1. Elyara did not turn around. 1. A solo mission? How far are they from their nearest colony? Approximately 12 light-years. They are impossibly far from home, Commander. This region of space is uncharted to them. They should not be here." No, they should not, Elyara thought. The Xylosian Empire had monitored humanity for centuries from a safe distance. They were a curious species, violent, chaotic, and brilliant in equal measure. But they were also fragile. Their bodies were soft, their lifespans short, their tolerance for the horrors of deep space laughably limited. Every scientific analysis concluded the same thing: humans were ill-suited for the galaxy. They belonged on their garden worlds, not out here among the stars. And yet here one was, alone, 12 light-years from help. "Open a channel," Elyara commanded. The view screen flickered, and the image of a human male appeared. He was young, perhaps 30 standard cycles, with short-cropped brown hair and eyes the color of Earth's skies. He was strapped into a pilot's chair, his face slick with sweat, his breathing rapid. Behind him, sparks flew from a control panel, and the ominous red glow of emergency lighting painted the scene in tones of desperation. "This is Lieutenant Jason Cole of the Earth Confederation vessel Unexpected Valor," he said, his voice strained but steady. "I am transmitting a distress signal. My ship has suffered catastrophic systems failure. Life support is at 12%. I have no propulsion, no communications beyond this short-range burst. If anyone can hear this, please." The transmission cut out, replaced by static. Elyara turned to face her bridge crew. 20 Xylosian officers stared back at her, their expressions unreadable behind the veil of professional detachment. "Analysis," she said. Vex consulted his readings. "The human vessel has sustained severe damage to its primary reactor core. A containment breach is imminent. Even if we were to attempt a rescue, we could not reach them in time. At current projections, life support will fail in approximately 4 standard hours. The reactor will breach in 3. "Then there is nothing to be done," said Science Officer Thalen, an older Xylosian with deep-set eyes. "The human will perish. It is unfortunate, but it is the way of the galaxy. The weak do not survive." Elyara nodded slowly. It was logical. It was efficient. It was the Xylosian way. They did not interfere in the affairs of lesser species. To do so would be to disrupt the natural order, to coddle those who could not coddle themselves. But something made her hesitate. Perhaps it was the look in the human's eyes. Not just fear, but something else. A flicker of defiance that she had not expected. "Maintain long-range sensors," she ordered. "Record everything. If there is anything to be learned from this incident, we will learn it." The vigil. For the next 3 hours, the crew of the Truthseeker watched. It was, they told themselves, a scientific observation. A study in how a lesser species faced extinction. The human's ship drifted silently through the void, a tomb waiting to be sealed. Every few minutes, a new system would fail, and the lights aboard the Unexpected Valor would flicker and dim. The life support readings dropped steadily, 10%, 8%, 6%. And yet, the human did not simply wait to die. They watched as he dragged himself from his chair to a storage locker, his movements slow and labored as the oxygen thinned. They watched as he pulled out a toolkit and began frantically working on a panel near the reactor core. His lips moved constantly, talking to himself, perhaps, or praying to whatever gods his kind believed in. "He's trying to repair the containment field," Vex reported, genuine surprise coloring his voice. It's futile. He doesn't have the tools, the materials, or the time. The radiation levels near that core are already lethal. He must know this. "Then why does he continue?" asked a young ensign, her first deep space assignment. No one answered. The human worked for another hour. They watched as his movements grew slower, more uncoordinated. They watched as he collapsed once, twice, 3 times, each time dragging himself back to his feet with a determination that bordered on madness. Then, the reactor alarm began to blare. On the view screen, they saw the human freeze. He looked at the reading on his console, and even through the grainy transmission, they could see the moment he understood. There was no more time. The containment field would fail in minutes, and when it did, the resulting explosion would vaporize his ship and everything within 100 kilometers. "He knows," Thalen murmured. "He knows it's over. Now we will see how a human faces the end." They expected panic. They expected pleas, tears, perhaps a final message to loved ones they would never see again. What they got was something else entirely. The human moved, not toward an escape pod. There were none. Not toward a communications array to send final words. He moved back toward the reactor core. He's going inside the containment chamber," Vex breathed, his voice barely a whisper. "Commander, the radiation levels in there are beyond anything a living being can withstand. It's suicide." Elyara leaned forward, her silver eyes narrowing.
Why?
Why would he do that? They watched as the human disappeared into the heart of the dying reactor. For a long, terrible moment, nothing happened. The Truth Seeker's sensors registered the rising energy levels, the inevitable countdown to oblivion. And then, impossibly, the readings began to change. "The energy spike it's stabilizing," Vex said, his voice rising with disbelief. "The containment field is reforming. Commander, the human is physically manipulating the reactor core. He's using his own body to redirect the flow of plasma, to seal the breach with his bare hands." On the view screen, a figure emerged from the reactor chamber. It was barely recognizable as the human who had entered. His flight suit was scorched and smoking. His skin was blistered and blackened. He moved on legs that should not have been able to support weight, dragging himself along the corridor with arms that hung at unnatural angles. "He should be dead," Thalen said flatly. "Multiple times over. The radiation exposure alone. His cells should be tearing themselves apart. The heat, the trauma, the cellular damage. It's not possible for a biological organism to continue functioning." But the human did continue. He crawled, inch by agonizing inch, back toward the pilot's chair. He pulled himself into it. He reached for the communications array. And then, his voice crackled through the Truth Seeker's speakers. "This is Lieutenant Jason Cole," he said, his voice a ruined whisper. "Reactor breach, contained. Life support at 2%. Requesting assistance. I can hold on. Just a little longer." Elyara's hand moved before her mind could stop it. She slammed the comm button. "This is Commander Elyara of the Xylosian vessel Truth Seeker," she said, her voice urgent. "Lieutenant Cole, we are launching a rescue shuttle."
Hold on.
"Do you understand? Hold on." On the screen, the human's lips curved into something that might have been a smile. Then his eyes closed, and his head slumped forward. The aftermath. They brought him aboard. It was against protocol, against logic, against every law of non-interference the Xylosian Empire held sacred. But they brought him anyway. The medical bay of the Truth Seeker was the most advanced in this sector of the galaxy, and yet the Xylosian physicians stared at the humans' readings with something approaching horror. "This is not survivable," the chief medical officer said, her voice trembling. "Commander, look at these readings. His cellular structure is 70% compromised. His nervous system is firing randomly. His internal organs they're failing one by one. By every metric we have, this being should have been dead 2 hours ago." "Then why is he still alive?" Elyara asked. The medical officer shook her head slowly. "I don't know. His body is dying, but his brain is refusing to accept it. It's as if his consciousness is physically holding his biology together through sheer force of will." For 3 days, they worked to save him. They pumped nanorepair bots into his bloodstream. They placed him in a regeneration tank designed for Xylosian physiology, hoping it would translate. They monitored his vitals constantly, waiting for the moment when his body would finally surrender to the inevitable. It did not come. On the 4th day, his eyes opened. Elyara was standing over him when it happened. She had spent more time in the medical bay than was strictly necessary, drawn by something she could not name. She watched as the human's blue eyes focused on her face, as his lips parted to speak. You saved me," he whispered. "You saved yourself," she replied. "We merely watched." A ghost of a smile crossed his ravaged features. "Then you saw what we are." Elyara did not answer. She had indeed seen. She had seen a creature of flesh and blood walk into certain death and emerge on the other side. She had seen a body that should have failed continue to function. She had seen a mind that refused to accept the limits of biology. She had seen something that challenged everything her species believed about the universe. "Rest now," she said softly. "There will be time for questions later." As she turned to leave, his hand reached out and caught her wrist. His grip was weak, but the intention behind it was strong. "Commander," he said, "there's something you should know. Something about humans." She waited. "We don't know how to give up," he said. "It's not in us. You can break our bodies. You can break our minds. But you cannot make us stop. Not ever. Remember that." He released her wrist, and his eyes closed, his body finally surrendering to the healing sleep it so desperately needed. Elyara stood there for a long moment, staring at the being on the bed. Then she walked slowly back to the bridge, where her crew waited with questions she could not answer. "Commander," Vex said hesitantly, "the High Council has been demanding a report. They want to know why we violated the Prime Directive. They want to know what we've learned." Elyara looked out at the stars, at the vast, indifferent galaxy that she had always believed operated on predictable, logical principles. "Tell them," she said quietly, "that we have learned we know nothing. Tell them that we have encountered a species that defies every calculation, every prediction, every assumption we have ever made." She paused, her silver eyes reflecting the light of a distant sun. "Tell them that humanity is not what we thought. They are not fragile. They are not weak. They are perhaps the most dangerous and most remarkable species in the galaxy." She turned to face her crew. "And tell them that from this day forward, the Xylosian Empire will watch humanity with new eyes. Not as observers studying a lesser species, but as students studying their teachers. For if we can learn to endure even a fraction of what that man endured, we will be stronger for it." The bridge was silent. No one spoke. No one moved. On the view screen, the stars continued their eternal dance, indifferent to the revelation that had just occurred aboard the Truth Seeker. But for the Xylosians who watched, nothing would ever be the same. And in the medical bay, Jason Cole slept, his body slowly, painfully, impossibly healing itself, cell by cell, moment by moment. Because that's what humans do. Epilogue. 6 months later. The Xylosian High Council chamber was vast, a circular arena of black stone where the most powerful beings in the Empire gathered to decide the fate of worlds. Today, they gathered to decide the fate of a single human. Commander Elyara stood in the center of the chamber, her posture rigid, her voice steady as she delivered her final report. And so, honored council, I present to you Lieutenant Jason Cole of the Earth Confederation, a being who should have died, a being who refused to die, a being who taught us that our understanding of biology, of consciousness, of the very nature of life itself, was incomplete. The council members stirred in their elevated seats, their ancient faces unreadable. "And what would you have us do with this being?" asked the High Counselor, his voice like grinding stone. "I would have us learn from him," Elyara replied. "I would have us open diplomatic relations with the Earth Confederation. I would have us acknowledge that humanity, though young and chaotic, possesses something we do not, an indomitable will that transcends the limits of flesh." A murmur ran through the council. "And if they turn that will against us?" asked another counselor. Elyara smiled, a rare expression on her stern features. "Then we will have earned their enmity, and we will deserve what follows. But I do not believe that will happen. I believe that if we approach them with respect rather than condescension, we will find in humanity something we have sought for millennia, true allies." The council deliberated for 3 days. In the end, they chose wisely. Jason Cole returned to Earth not as a castaway, but as an ambassador, the first human to establish relations with the Xylosian Empire. He carried with him a message from Commander Elyara, a message that would be taught in human schools for generations. "You taught us that the universe is not governed solely by logic and probability. You taught us that we can triumph over biology. You taught us that humans aren't supposed to endure the impossible, and yet you do. Always. Remember that when you look at the stars, they are yours if you have the will to reach for them." And on a distant world, in a quiet observation deck, Commander Elyara looked out at the same stars and smiled. She had watched in shock as a human defied death. Now, she watched in hope as humanity began to take its rightful place among the stars.